Wish I could feel what I can't see. Float like a butterfly, scream like a banshee. Something's hiding in the pantry.
Hi guys, and welcome back. So this is something that is kind of new. I've done a couple story times on my channel before, but not too many. And I'm telling you, I could do a lot. My life has been some kind of fuckery. That's what I can tell you. It has been a ride so far in my 34 years on this planet. A lot of things have happened to me. And I always thought about starting a channel that was like a story time thing or doing story times, but I really do fear the backlash of talking about it, of things that have happened, or of people just knowing that that's happened to me or to someone I know. It's hard to explain, but there are many reasons why. I'm getting comfortable and ready to relax. There are many reasons why I haven't, but this one I particularly want to talk about because I want it to maybe help someone else out there. Because what I went through was unnecessary. It should have never happened. It was probably, I would say, illegal, and if I had been a little bit more educated on that fact, I probably could have sued. So, as you saw in the title, this is a story time of my last pregnancy with my son, Keegan, and everything that went down since his conception. Whew, it was not fun from day one, let me tell you. Now, I have two kids before Keegan, Kingston and Emily. Emily was my first kid. I had her when I was 19, and she, of course, that was rough because I first learned what contractions feel like. It was my first child, so they wanted me to really go through the labor process before I could have an epidural or anything. And I guess, I don't even think they really actually gave me an epidural because they gave me something in my spine, but I didn't have it hooked to me. So I think it was just more of a nerve blocker than an epidural, because an epidural actually keeps, there's a little tiny hose that stays in your spine. And you can't move after that, and that was not the case for me with my daughter. So with her, I had tearing so bad that I had to get stitches on both sides of, the girl. Six stitches on each side. I had 12 stitches. That was fun to heal from. So that, while that was like, oh my goodness, that's what childbirth is, that's basically what I thought it could be. A lot of people talk about, don't be scared if they have to cut you from your one hole to the other, your perineal or whatever. And I'm always like, they ain't doing that. And I always worried about pooping on the table. Still did. Every single time. Okay? They tell you you don't care, and sometimes you don't care, but that it does at some point. You go through your mind and you're like, am I pooping on them? Are they cleaning up poop right now? But when it came to having Keegan, now, Kingston and Keegan are both rainbow babies. I had a miscarriage in between having both of them. And, I mean, honestly, I thought it was because me and my husband just can't have girls. Because it just feels like that. It felt like every time I got pregnant and I would miscarry, I'm like, and then I'd get pregnant and wouldn't, it was a boy. And I'm like, I wonder if we just can't have girls. I don't know. I don't know how that works. But they were rainbow babies. Kingston came into this world it was so happy. Like, I was laughing while he was literally coming out of me. Me and my sister were laughing together. My whole family was there. It was a very joyous thing. I had no tearing. There was no complications. He was the best baby in the whole world. So I went from that to Keegan. Now, every single pregnancy has always been, I get deathly ill. And I used midwives with Emily and with Kingston, and I need Zofran when I'm pregnant because otherwise I end up in the hospital dehydrated. I run the risk of getting way too dehydrated and going into pre-labor, or the actual pregnancy just dying because it's not properly, it's not good down there, man. If you're not eating, I couldn't even keep water down. I couldn't do anything. If I sat up, I was puking. So I have to have Zofran. And midwives kind of fight you on that. They want you to try everything. But it didn't work. And I didn't have like nighttime morning sickness or anything like that. I had 24/7 24/7 from day one until that baby pops out, morning sickness. Never stopped. My 2 pregnancies before Keegan, I actually lost more weight than I gained with my pregnancies. Now we're going into Keegan's birth, and this is the first time I've been pregnant and been overweight. So I decide I'm already getting sick. I don't want to deal with the midwives giving me their natural shit. And that's what was going through my head. I love how nice they are. I love how much they make you feel so special. But I don't like how they fight you about getting Zofran and medications. So you have a choice in my OBGYN to either go to the midwives or go to the doctors. So I decided that with Keegan, I'm going to go see a doctor. I'm going to see the doctors this time because I know what I'm doing. This is my 3rd pregnancy, and they don't fight you about the drugs you need. So I went there. I think I had like 5 different doctors, and they always rotate you. You never know. You never know. You're not, unless you got money, you don't have just one doctor or one midwife. You have whoever's on call, whoever's there, whoever you make an appointment with. So I got through maybe 2 doctors that I had seen, loved them, got my Zofran, I was all good, all set, and I noticed that I was getting big very quickly. And the day that I went in to see the doctor that this all happened with, her name was Dr. Gardner, and I'd never seen her before, but I expected her to be just as cool as the other people were because they were really cool. But I was going to ask her, like, why am I getting so much bigger so much quicker? You know, like, is it because I'm overweight? Because I thought that you didn't show. Like, I thought if you're overweight, it takes longer to show. You know, that's just how it goes. If you're skinny, you're going to start showing that you're pregnant much faster than when you're overweight. But I was already looking like I was having twins. And she came in and didn't even introduce herself. And before I could even get out any questions, she starts telling me how fat I am and how unhealthy it is, and how she goes, you can't even eat squash, because I was telling her, like, what kind. I like squash, like vegetables and stuff like that. She's like, no starches, nothing for you, like, just eat steak. And this is exactly what's coming out of this woman's mouth. And she is probably about 5 foot tall, 100 pounds soaking wet, and a redhead. And she's telling me, she's fat shaming me, telling me that I'm way too overweight, that I've gained way too much weight for the beginning of the pregnancy, and, you know, even looks over at my husband and starts talking to him about his weight, and he's not even obese, okay? He's got a little bit of a beer belly. And she starts talking to him about his nutrition and how he needs to change his nutrition. And she's going off and off and off and off before we even know her name. So I've already sat there and been fat shamed for the first time in my life, if I may add. That was the first time in my life I've ever been fat shamed. And it was when I was pregnant. When I cannot do anything about it. You know? So it's like, her bedside manner was horrendous. So she come in and she drilled on it so hard about, you've gained so much weight. And I'm just like, no, I haven't, actually. I know I look bigger than I should, and I'm measuring bigger than I should, but I haven't gained as much weight as you're thinking. And I'm like, I started this pregnancy at 175. And she was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah. And it's come to find out, the nurse that weighed me wrote down the wrong number. So the doctor thought I had gained like 50 pounds in the matter of a month, when that wasn't the case. And before asking, before figuring anything out, before trying to touch the subject gently with a pregnant woman who is deathly ill and sick, she just comes right in, doesn't even introduce herself, and starts basically berating me about how fat I am. And then while she has me on my back measuring my stomach, she is still going on and on and on and on about how fat I am. And she's not using obese, you know, any of that, overweight. She's using the word fat over and over and over and over again. And I'm about almost in tears, and that's not the kind of person I am. I love blunt doctors. I love doctors that tell me things straightforward. But this was unnecessary because there was nothing that I could do about it. And then come to find out, it was their clerical error that caused her to think that I was gaining so much weight. Did I get an apology from her when she found that out right in front of me? No, I did not. She carried on, well, you're still obese. And I was just like, so I never got to ask any questions, nothing. And I saw her, go figure, almost every other time after that. Thankfully, she did not deliver me, but I did see her almost every visit after that, and it was the same thing every single time. Now, mind you, I am looking huge. I am. And so I'm believing what she's saying, which means I'm starving myself while I'm pregnant because I think that I'm hurting myself by eating. That's what she had caused. Now, what ended up happening, and this, they say it's rare, it's like a 1 to 3% happens to each woman. I have it written down here. Let's see, where did I put it? I had a condition, and they didn't find this out until afterwards, and then they didn't even want to admit it. But me and my husband, we both know exactly what happened. So, it's called polyhydramnios. I'm not going to say it correctly. I'll put it on the screen. Polyhydramniosis. It is, in layman terms, when you make an excessive amount of amniotic fluid, which can cause a lot of problems. And this is something that not only should my doctor have known right away, but so shouldn't the ultrasound technician. You know, and they can't tell me if they see that. They can't tell me anything, but they tell the doctor. You know, so I don't know if that ultrasound technician just didn't say anything. I doubt they didn't. Or if she just didn't care because I was heavy. So I know I have this. I know now that I had that then. And I suffered so hard, and so many bad things could have happened to me and my son, and probably did, because my son is autistic, and it runs through my head a lot now. Is he autistic because of this mistake that happened because I was overweight when I got pregnant with him, and the doctor cared more about fat shaming me than seeing that I had this problem that was, it's like a medical issue. It puts you high risk because you when you make too much amniotic fluid, you have trouble with the cord can prolapse and come out of you before the baby does. You can have a breech baby that won't come out. The baby will come out too fast. Yeah, remember that one. Too fast, which can cause a lot of breathing troubles, a lot of brain defects, because it's, you know, the baby's head's very soft and smushy at that point. Coming out too fast can actually cause a lot of damage in there. And it's linked to a lot of things. Down syndrome. A lot of people who have Down syndrome children have a lot of amniotic fluid. With Kingston, my previous pregnancy, my first son, he actually had a marker on his heart for Down syndrome, but he came out and he was fine. So I wasn't surprised that was happening. Now that I look at it, I'm not surprised that I also had this disorder. And it can also cause like preterm labor, bigger babies, everything. Well, my son was over 10 pounds. They never said anything to me about making too much amniotic fluid. They never said any of that. And towards the end of the pregnancy, I started like almost passing out. I was in so much pain. My hips were making too much of the hormone relaxin, so they were literally like floating bones when I'd walk. I couldn't sleep. I had to sleep upright, literally how I am right now. And it was all due to not just him being a big baby, but me having this disorder and it being undiagnosed, because my doctor cared more about how fat I was while I was pregnant than to look at why I was that big. You know, like, she didn't take the time to look. None of them did. And I even complained to the staff at the front desk that she fat shamed me. And I was upset, and I was like almost in tears. And they were like, you know, and I said something on Facebook about it. My personal Facebook, which has a lot of people that I know from school and life and where I live on it. And a lot of them had her too for their pregnancies, and it was like 50-50. Either 50% of them loved her, thought that she was like the coolest, and then there was a huge chunk of people who were like, she made my birth and pregnancy the worst ever, the worst experience ever. I'm part of that group too. And I did look her up online, and she has had a couple lawsuits against her, and a lot of it seems to be like a bedside type of harassment thing. And it made me so mad, because when I almost plopped this kid out of my vagina mid-road, okay? This is the first time I have a video of it on my channel of me vlogging it, but my water broke on its own. My water had never been broken on its own. They've always had to go in there with that crochet hook and break my water. They didn't have to do that this time. My water broke. It was continuously coming out. I was like sitting on a towel the whole time, but he was coming fast, and I knew it. I could feel it. We were like 20 minutes from the hospital, and I needed to push. You know, like I felt that. And then we get to the hospital, and they seem like almost like they're irritated that I'm there. It's not a good vibe. I get there, I get this nurse that's trying to put an IV in, and it's so much mayhem all around me happening, and I don't know why, but I look down, and on the ground there's probably about this much of my blood on the floor. Pile of my blood, because the nurse didn't know what she was doing and jabbed my arm with the IV needle and then ripped it out and then left my arm hanging over the side of the bed while she went to go get another one. I could have just like bled out. But another nurse was like, oh my God. So, you know, that happened as well. So then I'm sitting there, and they finally get it all fixed and stuff like that, wipe up all my blood. And then I go in to get, like, I ask for an epidural. Because I know, like, this, I can't do this. You know, give me an epidural. I'm that kind of person. I don't care. So this was actually my first time having an epidural. Or I should say my second time, because with Kingston I think I had an epidural too, but that was easy and quick, and there was like no problems whatsoever. But this time an older gentleman came in, and he was making jokes, and he mentioned something that stuck out to me afterwards. He said, I have carpal tunnel. And he was like 80. And this is the guy that's putting a needle in my fucking back, guys. Yeah, I have carpal tunnel. He goes to put the needle in my back, and all of a sudden I get this feeling like I got hit by lightning. And it comes from the middle of my back, down my leg, through my pinky toe. It feels like hot fire, and I jump. I couldn't not move. The nurse was holding on to me, and she's like, you can't move. And I'm like, I know, but like, what the fuck? You know, I actually felt bad because I had nails and I had broke skin on her arm. You know, and for a medical person, she was probably freaking out, but she stayed pretty calm for that. But he'd fucked up when he was doing my epidural, and he hit a nerve in my spine, and when I jumped, the needle came out, the cannula came out, and literally all of this fluid came flying out, and I didn't know what it was. And then I heard my husband go, well, what was that? And he goes, oh, that's our spinal fluid. What? So we get through all that, and all that trauma stops my labor, basically. Like, trauma stops labor, and not in a good way. So then I'm sitting there, and I have to get put on Pitocin because my labor stops, and that makes it hurt worse. So I'm sitting up in bed like I'm sitting right now, and they gave me a button to push if the epidural wore off, to push the button. Well, I pushed it a couple of times because it didn't seem to be working. All of a sudden, my blood pressure bottoms out. I almost fall right off the fucking gurney. My husband catches me. I'm like, what is going on? The nurse comes in and she's like, oh, you're not supposed to have that button. You're not supposed to have that button. It's supposed to be wrapped around the thing, and we'll come in and press it if you say, you know, you're in pain again. She's like, you're not supposed to press that button that many times. Oh my goodness. So now I'm going to have to give birth, like, in and out of consciousness, you know? And that's basically what I did. So I'm pushing, and he comes out, 3 pushes. He comes, and I'm telling you, 10-pound baby. out of my vagina comes flying out of me. Flying out of me. I have just a whoop, 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 like diarrhea out. And the doctor, who I really liked, actually, the doctor that helped give birth, you know, he was there for it. He was like, oh, like fumbling my baby because he came out so fast. And then when he came out, it was like a whew, like that. Well, I just punched my leg. He was like whew, all over him. It even went up over his head and behind him of my amniotic fluid. And once he had a hold of Keegan, he unwrapped the cord from around him, because the cord was not only like around him, it was around his chest. I mean, we make jokes now about how he was like Indiana Jones and he like wrapped it around and just jumped out of my crotch. But no, he came out within seconds because of this disorder that I had. And after that doctor's initial shock of the baby coming out so fast, I could tell by the look on his face and the way that he looked over at everybody else that he knew that I had this disorder. And then all sorts of buzzing started happening around the room really quick, all at once. You know, they're like, I have a lot of video footage. I don't know if I can find it all. I'll put it in or whatnot, but he was a really big baby. He didn't seem to have any problems, but they kept coming in and checking on him. And little did I know, but because of that guy's screw up with my epidural, I had an epidural headache, which is actually deadly. And so my back was seizing and spasming. They wouldn't help me for the pain. They wouldn't help me with nothing. They just kind of left us in a room for a couple of days, and we felt like we were in jail. My husband's like, I need to get out of here or I'm going to freak out. And I felt the same way. It was so bad. And they kept coming in and like pricking him and taking blood and doing weird things. And they're like, oh, we're just checking to make sure he's okay. I've had 3 kids. They never did that before, you know. And then they're like, oh, he's kind of big, so we're just checking to make sure, you know, he doesn't have diabetes or nothing like that. And I'm like, no, you're covering your ass. Now that I look back on it, I didn't know then. I look back at it now, and they were covering their ass. They wanted to see what kind of damage would happen because they did not diagnose this. Like, they didn't diagnose the fact that I had that syndrome, and they wanted to see if they could luck their way out of it, because if something was seriously wrong, they'd have to admit the fuck up, and I could have sued. So I didn't know at the time. I was just like, what are they doing? Fat shaming my baby now? You know, like, that's how I felt. So this is why I wanted to make this story time, was because I didn't advocate for myself strong enough. And I hope that if you feel something in your gut when you're pregnant, you fight so hard for yourself and you fight so hard for your baby. Because now I have a 4-year-old son who I love so much, but I did a lot of research on this disorder, and autism happens a lot. Autism or Down syndrome happens a lot, and my son is on the spectrum. Would he be if I had been diagnosed and dealt with properly? I don't know. I can't tell you that answer. But I do know that all of it clicked together for me, and now my son may forever be affected. His whole life will be forever affected because of it, if that is the reason why. So that's why I wanted to make this stories, because I didn't. It was my 3rd pregnancy. I was done with it. It was my last one. He was a big baby. I just wanted the whole thing over because the experience was bad, from the visits to the doctor to the hospital to giving birth. It was all really, really, really bad. I spent a week after trying to deal with the epidural headache, not exactly knowing what it was. And then I ended up having to go back into the hospital to get a surgery done where they sit me up and take blood out of my arm and put it into my spine to cause a clot, to stop my spinal fluid from leaking. That's what causes the epidural headache. And if you go too long with one of those, you will die. I went a week not knowing. And they couldn't get any blood out of my arm because I was so dehydrated and so incredibly sick. They had to take a red light out to try to find a vein. It was like I was a crackhead or something. They couldn't find a vein. So they finally did that, patched it up, but I have had problems with my body ever since. And when you do research on this particular syndrome, you will see that it does not only affect the baby badly, but it affects the mother badly as well. So no matter what, if you feel something is off in your pregnancy, no matter how many babies you've had, no matter what, you advocate for yourself. You speak up. Don't let somebody fat shame you. Look into things further. You know, I was so shocked and overwhelmed by being fat shamed that I overlooked every red flag. So I wanted to make this story time now. So maybe it could help somebody out there if you're feeling the same way, if you've been fat shamed by a doctor. I figured maybe we could talk about it in the comment section. It's just a lot. I think back now all the time and I'm just like, damn, like all the things I could have done. All the things I could have done. And I didn't. And I regret it. So that is my crazy story time about my last pregnancy, my last birth, and all of that went on with it. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. Let me know if you guys have any birthing horror stories or bedside manner stories, because yeah, I know there's a lot of those assholes out there. So give this video a thumbs up if you want me to do more story times. Let me know in the comments, and thank you for sitting through this. I know it was quite long. Thank you so much for watching, and I of course will see you guys in the next one.